What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate, and welcome back to my channel. I am back with yet another schedule preview and record prediction video, and we're rounding them out. And today, we're going to be doing the 2020 Purdue Boilermakers. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, why is he doing Purdue? Purdue's not that great. Purdue is a very underrated team, in my opinion, and I think it's a team that has the potential to make a lot of noise in the Big Ten. They're returning their quarterback, Jack Plummer, and, of course, their head coach, Jeff Brom. He's done an absolutely phenomenal job. Purdue threw for 1 billion yards last year without Rondale Moore, and this year, Rondale Moore is coming back. He's one of the most explosive playmakers in all of college football. I think he's one of the best players on the field in 2020, and he is on the Purdue Boilermakers. Otherwise, why would I be talking about him? So we're going to go ahead and see if my prediction is correct, and Purdue can surprise a lot of people in the Big Ten this year, or Purdue's just going to do what they did last year and disappoint. All right, so here's the schedule for the Purdue Boilermakers. You look down there, their 2019 record was 4-8. They played some really close games. They played Nebraska close, ended up winning that one. They ended up playing Indiana really close. That one went into overtime, and Indiana ended up winning that one 44-41. So Purdue, they weren't really that close to making a bowl game. As I said, had a lot of injury problems and things like that. But Purdue overall still was, I think, an overlooked team last year, and they have a lot of potential this year. Look up there, their home games are going to be in gold, and their away games are going to be in black. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the Purdue Boilermakers schedule. Their first game of the season is a very interesting game, in my opinion, because they have to go on the road to play Nebraska. So Purdue, in my opinion, does have more raw talent than Nebraska, especially since J.D. Spielman is now going to be transferring out of Nebraska. He is no longer a Nebraska Cornhusker and will go elsewhere. I think that Purdue, like I just said, has more raw talent, but it's at home for Nebraska, and I feel like Nebraska's got a lot of chips on their shoulders. Scott Frost might be starting to get looked at with scrutiny here, Nebraska guy, so it's not quite that time yet, I don't think. But Nebraska, anyway, has had a lot of struggles in the past, and this year is hopefully a year that Nebraska can get back to a bowl game. It's one of those years like that for Purdue as well. So I think this is a very interesting game, and I definitely think that the winner of this game is going to have an above expectation season, and the loser of this game is going to have a below expectation season. It's just going to be one of those type of games, and a game that I have favored Nebraska earlier, but really I could see either team being able to win this one. But I still do slightly favor Nebraska just because it is a game in Memorial Stadium. But Purdue definitely does have the talent to go out and win this game. Now, Purdue has one of the more interesting non-conference schedules, in my opinion. The first game is at home against Memphis, and this is a very interesting game, in my opinion, because Memphis is losing their head coach, Mike Norvell, but they are returning quarterback Brady White. They're returning their running back, Kenneth Gainwell. They are losing their wide receiver, Gibson, but a lot of guys on defense are also coming back. Memphis is still going to be a very solid team next year, and kind of can't wait to watch this game here because, again, Purdue has got more raw talent than Memphis, I believe, but Memphis got the better running game. Purdue's got the better passing game. It's going to be an offensive shootout, in my opinion. I think Purdue's going to be one of the more higher-scoring teams in college football next year. But I'm going to give the early edge to Purdue because it is a home game for the Boilermakers. But again, like the Nebraska one, I could see this one going either way as well. Then they get a home game against Air Force, and this is another interesting game. Air Force is returning their quarterback, Donald Hammond, but overall expected to take a step back from where they were last year. They surprised a lot of people in going 11-2 last year. 10-2 in the regular season. They surprised an absolute crap ton of people, including myself, and that Donald Hammond can play like he did last year, and guys can really step up. Air Force is going to be another dangerous team. But again, I am going to give the slight edge here to Purdue because it is a home game, and because because Purdue has flat out more raw talent than Air Force. Air Force is still a tricky team. Purdue's run defense isn't the best, and that's what Air Force is known to do. So I think Purdue should definitely watch out for this one. Then they get a road game against Boston College, and this one should be an easy one for Purdue. After 3 competitive games, in my opinion. Boston College is losing A.J. Dillon, losing their quarterback. If the transfer from Notre Dame can play, maybe they have more of a shot. But I see Purdue being able to get an easy win here on the road against Boston College. So then they get their bye week, and my opinion, not a great place for a bye week. Look at the two games in between. Boston College and Rutgers. I mean, just an absolutely horrible place for a bye week, in my opinion. You'd love to have it after Illinois, before Michigan, but this, terrible place for a bye week. But then they have to play Rutgers. Rutgers is still, in my opinion, the worst team in the Big Ten, but they are getting Greg Schiano back at head coach, and they have some good talent. They've had a lot of transfers transfer out last year and this year, but overall Rutgers, I think, give them a couple years, and they're going to be on the rise, and a team that Big Ten should watch out for. But as of right now, Purdue should get the easy win. Then they get a tough road game on the road at Illinois. So Illinois is a team in the Big Ten that is also trending upward. Lovie Smith has done an absolutely fantastic job at Illinois. Brandon Peters is a transfer from Michigan. He transferred there a couple years ago, and in my opinion, is going to be pretty good this year. The Big Ten has a lot of great quarterbacks. Brandon Peters, maybe not in the top, but still going to be a very, very good quarterback. He's got lots of good guys around him. The defense is the only question I have for Illinois, but Purdue comes to town in Champaign to play Illinois. It's going to be a very competitive game, in my opinion. And this is actually a game that I think Purdue is going to be able to beat Illinois on the road. It could be a tricky game. It'll be a good environment. Illinois beat Wisconsin at home last year. So maybe Illinois can beat Purdue in what I'm going to call an upset, because I think Purdue's going to end up being favored in this game. I really like Purdue this year. I think they're going to be able to get the road win here against the Fighting Illini. All right, so let's move on to the second half of their schedule. And it's first up is a road game against the Michigan Wolverines. This one is going to be hard because we've seen Purdue pull off upsets against East teams in the past. Remember, in 2018, they beat Ohio State, but that was in their own house. No, I don't expect Michigan to be that great next year. I believe I had them at 8-4, which is not that great. I mean, the quarterback issue is the big problem here for Michigan. They're returning a lot of production back on offense. Hassan Haskins, Zach Charbonnet, Nico Collins, Ronnie Bell, Nick Eubanks. The only thing that they've lost is Tariq Black, who I think was their top guy. He transferred over to Texas, and of course they're losing Shea Patterson. They're going to have to replace him. It'll probably be with Dylan McCaffrey. Michigan, to me, has more raw offensive talent, and while the defense, I think, has some questions, I think Michigan's got a lot figured out by now. I think it'll be closer than a lot of people think, but I still think Michigan's going to be able to get the win here against the Boilermakers. Then a home game against the Northwestern Wildcats. Northwestern's a little bit of a hard team to figure out this year. I don't think they're going to do too great. Peyton Ramsey is going to be their quarterback. He's a transfer over from Indiana. Again, I don't think Northwestern's going to be that great because they have Peyton Ramsey and who else? Really nobody. Defense is okay, I guess, but Purdue, again, just has more talent. I see them being able to beat Northwestern here fairly handily. Then a road game against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And this is a game that I don't think Purdue's going to be able to win. Minnesota, I've heard, is a likely landing spot for J.D. Spielman, which will replace Tyler Johnson absolutely perfectly. And they already have Rashad Bateman, a great wide receiver, and Tanner Morgan, who is an absolutely phenomenal quarterback. I really like Tanner Morgan this year. He has a lot of potential. The defense needs to replace a lot, but I think Minnesota's got most, if not everything, figured out by this point, and they're going to be able to get the win here against the Boilermakers. Then a home game against the Wisconsin Badgers. This could be a tricky game for Wisconsin. It really could be, because Purdue is a team that, Purdue is a team that, again, I've said so many times, they're for 1 billion yards last year without Rondale Moore, and now that they're getting Rondale Moore back, they're still a very young, talented team, and a team that I think can surprise a lot of people. This could be a game where Purdue raises a lot of people's eyes. I know it's late in the season, but it could dreadfully impact Wisconsin's playoff hopes, or even hopes at a Big Ten championship. They get them at home. Purdue's pulled off big upsets at home before. Again, 2018 at Ohio State, and many more. I ultimately going to give the slight edge to Wisconsin here because I think they have replaced Jonathan Taylor by now. I don't think to the fullest extent, but they have a guy in there, maybe two guys that they really like to use. Wide receivers shouldn't be that big of an issue, and Jack Cohn, in my opinion, is going to be one of the more underrated quarterbacks this year. So I feel like Wisconsin's going to be able to get the win, but it's going to be closer than a lot of people think. Then they're going to go stay at home, and play the Iowa Hawkeyes. Now, Iowa's a team that I have trending down. Lots of drama surrounding the Iowa program right now, and they're losing a lot of good players. Nate Stanley is out. They're losing their defensive end, A.J. Epinesa, and the offensive tackle, Tristan Wirfs. Iowa, for me, is just on the decline. They've always proven themselves to be a good 8-4, 9-3 team, but this year I have them going 7-5. If you want to watch that video, go ahead, go back and watch it. To me, this game could go either way. I feel like Purdue is the more talented team, but Iowa really could have everything figured out by this point. I think I'm going to give the slight edge to Purdue. I really could see Iowa being able to win this game, though, and ultimately what I think is going to be considered an upset if they pull off a win here against Purdue, because I don't see Iowa being that great. It's going to be a very close game, though. Then Purdue's going to play in another close game, in my opinion, on the road against Indiana. This is an Indiana team that I really, really like this year. Michael Penix is going to be the full-time starting quarterback after Peyton Ramsey transferred out, and I think we have yet to see what Michael Penix is truly capable of, and I'm really excited to see what Michael Penix does, especially with Watt Fillier there at wide receiver. Got some guys to replace on defense, but overall I really like this Indiana team, and they could also be a team to make some noise in the Big Ten. This game is going to be really close. It's a rivalry game. I could see this one going either way as well. I think Purdue is a team in the Big Ten that has one of the, maybe in the nation, that has some of the most of raw and untapped talent in the entire nation. And this game, honestly, I could see going either way, but I'm going to lean towards Indiana here, folks. All right, so now with everything being said and considered for the Purdue Boilermakers, I have them going 6-6. And it's not that they don't have great talent, it's just their non-conference is pretty tricky for the defensive talent that this Purdue team has. The defense not usually able to keep up with the offense, and they have a lot of tricky games. Of course, they have to play Minnesota and Wisconsin and Iowa and Indiana. Then they have to go on the road to play Illinois, on the road to play Michigan, also on the road to play Nebraska. They got a lot of tricky games, and I see them just being barely able to squeak into a bowl game. I think the easy wins on the schedule for them are Boston College, Rutgers, Northwestern, and I think Illinois is an easier win. A lot of people think. Like I said, that's just a game I have a feeling about, and they're going to be able to come in there and win. So all they got to do is win 2 more games, and they're in a bowl game. Memphis is not going to be as good as they have been in previous years. They could get a win there, could get a win at home against Air Force. They could spoil Nebraska's hopes at a good season and win that one. Just a lot of places where Purdue could really make some noise. So let's move on to their record range. What this is, I take this team's worst case scenario with their best case scenario. It's where I expect this team to be this year. And the worst case scenario I have for Purdue is doing exactly what they did last year, is 4-8. I don't think they can do any worse what they did last year, because Rondale Moore is just such a difference maker. But again, if he gets hurt again and can't play, and they got a lot of tricky games, they'll start off with a loss against Nebraska. Maybe they start out 0-3, lost to Memphis, lost to Air Force. But I think they're going to be able to beat Boston College pretty much no matter what, and then be able to beat Rutgers. But they have a lot of tricky games there. Now, I do think that Rondale Moore and Purdue is going to pull off an upset somewhere here in the schedule, but if he gets hurt again, they could go 4-8. But now their best case scenario for me is 9-3. Like I said, they can make a lot of noise. They definitely can beat Nebraska. They definitely can beat Iowa. They definitely can beat Indiana. They definitely can beat Illinois. The only 3 guaranteed losses I have to them on this schedule are Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Every other team on the schedule, I really could see them beating. They don't get that tough a draw from the East. Yes, they have to play Michigan, but the other teams that play from the East are Rutgers and Indiana. Now, Indiana's a rivalry game. They always have to play them, but the other team they got was Rutgers. Should be able to win that one, and I think if they win 9-3, it's going to surprise a lot of people, but I just have a feeling that Purdue is capable of something great this year. But to reiterate, my current prediction for the 2020 Purdue Boilermakers is 6-6. All right, that's going to do it for my schedule preview and record prediction for the 2020 Purdue Boilermakers. And if you guys enjoyed, please leave a like. Also consider subscribing if you are brand new to the channel, or just flat out enjoy my content. And if you haven't done so already, please do leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Purdue Boilermakers. And as always, until next time, remember, play hard, but tailgate harder. I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.